Welcome to Queers Quills, the official podcast. I'm audiobook narrator Kirt Graves. Every episode, I invite an attending author or narrator to join me for a one-on-one conversation about their lives and their art, so attendees and readers from across the world can get to know them not only as professionals, but as people. Joining me today is Meka James. Meka James is a writer of adult contemporary and erotic romance. A Georgia peach, born and raised, she still resides in the southern state with her hubby, 4 kids, 4 dogs, a turtle, and a snake. And when not writing or reading, Meka can be found playing The Sims and making up fun stories to accompany the pixelated people whose world she controls. Welcome to the podcast, Meka.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and it's so nice to get to meet you in advance of Queers Quills, where I will get to meet you.
Yes, I'm excited for that.
Yes. So let's start at the beginning. How did you become an author? What is your author origin story?
The Sims. Yes. I play The Sims then and now. And part of the Sims community, there is a whole thing called Simlit, where people actually do make up stories for The Sims. And so blogging isn't as big now as it was a couple years back, but you would go to their blogs and they would have a story and pictures and you would read and you would comment and you would interact. And so I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. I'll do that. And I did a couple of different stories, different blogs. And then I had one of the readers that enjoyed one of the stories that I was doing. And she asked me, did you ever think about actually writing a book? And I was just like, no. And she was like, but you should. And I was like, okay. And so she encouraged me to take that particular story and try and rework it for a different fictional world. Like Sims fictional is a whole different thing because they can do various things in Sims that wouldn't apply to regular fictional worlds unless you're doing paranormal. So I took it and de-simified it, I guess, and made it into, it's actually my very first book that was published. And that book is dedicated to her in memory because she passed before the book was published. But yeah, I came here via Sim stories.
Okay, I have to say, it's the first time I'm hearing that as an author origin story. You win.
Thank you.
Were you an avid reader? Like, did you ever think writing in any capacity would be a part of your future?
No, like I did and do like to read. And then as a child, I think, we go through spurts where you would write stories and make up things because you're creative and you have an outlet. Mm-hmm. But it was always just sort of more for fun. And I never really expected to make it into like a career.
Yeah.
It always thought it'd be something that was more of a hobby.
Yeah. I'm curious just to know, like, did you know any writers in your, like, immediate world? Because I think that's often something that, like, informs our ability to think of things we could do when we grow up, as if we see somebody doing it.
The only writers I had in my immediate world were the people that I interacted with on the Sims forums. Because they're writers too. I mean, it's just like people who write fanfic and things of that nature. Just because they aren't published. They're still writers and authors. And those were the only people that I knew in my immediate world at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I love that it was somebody saying, you're good.
Yes.
Go do this.
It was.
That kind of like collegial encouragement is something I think we forget that we have the power to do.
Yes. Because I don't think I would have branched out on my own if it wasn't for Jill being like, girl, do this. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So
sometimes I cave to peer pressure.
Well, hey, when it's good peer pressure, sometimes we need the push. Some of us need the push. What was that road like then? So somebody says, all right, you should do this. There's a lot to learn before you get to published books.
There is. But I didn't know that at the time, so I didn't learn it. Just being honest. So I knew there were some things I need to go through. Like I had to find a cover artist and things of that nature. But as far as all the ins and outs of publishing, I had the people that I had connected with and were friends from the Sims world who did my beta reading for me for the book as I was trying to like put it together in a more
Hmm.
logical fashion for the real world, even though it's still fictional. And
Yeah.
then, like we all sort of like learned about KDP and Amazon. And so I did join a couple of writer group places to
Hmm.
try and learn information that way. Back when Twitter was a thing, I, you
Hmm.
know, was on there. And so that's kind of how I did. I was pretty much, winging it. Didn't know all the things. And I'm still learning now, even
Yeah.
years later, but it was just a sort of, okay, well, let's see what happens with this thing. And
Hmm.
it was one of those ignorance is bliss kind of sort of way, because like if you don't know, you aren't scared or worried about what you don't know.
Right.
So
Exactly.
times have definitely changed since then. But yes, that
I
was,
I relate so hard to that because that's how I feel I got into narration was just like stumbling blind into into a thing that I was like, I can do this. And then over time I learned I was like, wow, I got away with a lot on those first
yes,
couple projects. I was like through sheer luck did I not totally mess that up. So
yes.
when was that? When did that happen? The suggestion and like the publishing.
The suggestion, my memory is trash. It was, I think that book came out in 2014. So it would have been around 2012, 2013 when I was having those discussions when I was
Hmm.
like in the different Sims forum and we were chatting and things like that. But I actually published the book, I believe, in 2014.
So that to me that seems early still in the world of indie publishing. Cuz like I came in around 2016 and like the difference in the resources that are available now to
Yes.
narrators who are just getting started versus when I like just 2016. We're talking less than 10 years ago. Like there was nothing. There was not a blog that was telling me like there were blogs, but they were using language I didn't understand. There were like technical specifications that I was like, what is my basis for knowing what this is? It was not catering to like somebody in their house learning how to do a thing.
Right.
And like I feel like I came in right around when indie publishing was really starting to pick up steam and like Facebook groups and like you said Twitter, people were starting to talk to each other and we were learning from one another, but before that, it really was sort of like it was the way to do something was to do it and learn from it.
Exactly. Yes. And that was definitely how I was. I'm like, okay, I guess we're just
Hmm.
doing this thing.
Yeah, it was almost like a purer time too. Now that I think
Yes.
about it, like there's a lot of opinions in the room now. If you were to start trying to do narration now, and I imagine it's the same for like writing a book and publishing it, there's a lot of people telling you what you're doing wrong.
100%. Yes, it definitely is. And that's why it was like the ignorance is bliss sort of thing because you just like, okay, I wrote the book.
Hmm.
People read the book. I made corrections. Now I can publish the book. The biggest hurdles I faced were finding a cover artist and figuring out how to format the books. But the rest of it, because I didn't know all the extra ins and outs, they weren't something I was concerned with at the time.
That is such a great way to put it. They were not things I was concerned with at the
Right.
time.
So I just rode with it, and
Yeah.
here we are.
Here we are, exactly. And we're both here. Somehow we both
Yes.
made it. Here we
We
are.
both made it, still chugging
In
along.
2025, we're still hanging on. We're still doing this work. And we're doing this work that features queer characters. So
Yes.
why was it important for you to include queer characters in your work?
That also came about as a what if kind of thing. Like I said, sometimes I cave to peer pressure. um, when I first started, I was doing romance. Well, the first book is a romance, but I was in the romance area.
Hmm.
But that first book is definitely not a romance. And with romance, and at the time, it was very much you wrote your book, feature straight people, you called it a day, kind of thing. But again, when Twitter was a thing, you could you talk to people and you saw like where there was holes in what was out there. Not that there wasn't anyone writing it, but it wasn't as many people writing it. And so one of the writing groups I had found via Twitter, one of the ladies in there, she was just like, would you ever consider writing, for the Alphabet Mafia? And I said, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't probably could do that. So, but then I had to figure out what was going to be the best way for me to write, but not, what am I trying to say? The best way for me to put my spin on the stories out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so starts with research, because again, a lot of romance that was available and that I was reading was very straight. And like you had to really hunt and find the queer stories, and especially sapphic queer stories, and then Black sapphic queer stories. Like there's layers of digging that had to be done.
Did you find any?
I did.
Okay.
So, and I hope I say this name correctly, Fiona Zeddy, I believe that's how we pronounce her last name, was out there, and she'd been writing a bunch. Chintzia C. Higgins was another one, and actually I found her works first. Her book, and I tell everybody this, Things Hoped For, remains my favorite Black sapphic romance. And like, so through like her work, Fiona's work, and then as you start digging, you find more people. I was reading and I was just like, okay. And then I also made sure I got sensitivity readers, because like I said, like with the straight romances, you kind of know what's what. And then I wanted to make sure as I was switching over, I wasn't just writing a straight romance, but with just two women.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
More than you know.
Okay. So I wanted to make sure that they were both very true to being, it read like a sapphic romance, as opposed to it being, oh, well, she just flipped the pronouns of one of these people, but this lady's coded definitely a dude. And kind of thing. And so my first sapphic one was Being Hospitable. And I started with a novella, and it was what I realized is one of my favorite tropes to write, which was best friend sibling.
Okay, sorry, you're gonna have to explain that.
The best friend sibling.
Best friend's sibling. I in my head I saw best friend / sibling.
Oh no!
I was like, no, got it. Best friend's sibling.
Best friend's sibling, right?
The two S's ran together, and I was like, what? No, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, no, I don't really lean taboo. I feel that that'd be in the taboo area. I haven't leaned into the taboo.
God bless if that's your thing.
Right. I've read plenty of taboo. I'm not judging. I'm just like, I haven't leaned there yet. But who's to say what happens in the future? But but I did. And I wrote that story. I had my sensitivity readers and my beta readers. And it just sort of became, they were like, oh, this is good. I was like, thank you. I felt good because I was very nervous about that book. And especially because there's the whole issue with, there's all kinds of phobias, and biphobia is also something that comes up. And so as a person who is straight presenting, because I am married to a man, I thought there would be pushback on that, but it actually, within the circle of people I have found and who read me and I interact with, that hasn't been an issue. And also, even though I'm writing these sort of sapphic stories, I am still sort of staying in what I consider my lane. I'm not trying to write stories about experiences that aren't my story to tell, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a tough thing to balance. And I know this is a fraught conversation between so many people, and like on any given day, I can have different thoughts about it based on who I'm talking to, based on the work that's in front of me sometimes. And it's gotten so much better, but like what you were talking about, like one character is coded a male, one character is coded female, even if that's not their stated genders. Like when I was getting started back in 2016, that was much more prevalent than it is now, thank goodness. But it was like, I'm doing these gay books where it's like, clearly one of these two is the women.
You're right.
You know, and it's like, I didn't know how to feel about that. And fortunately, when those conversations came up, people listened, they thought about it, there was introspection, there's been change. And to me, that's the important part.
Yes.
Right? It's the conversation, it's being self-aware, it's being willing to listen when somebody disagrees with you, and then really thinking like, do they have a point or do I just disagree? Either outcome is fine. But if the conversation doesn't happen, then that to me is the problematic part. No,
Yes.
No thing that somebody can do is more problematic than just not being willing to talk about it.
100%. Very true. Because like you can talk about it, not being able to like listen and actually take in what the other person is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been something. And I try and be very mindful in all of my writing, not just in my sapphic stories, but I try and be mindful of that for if I am touching on any sort of like hard topics or whatever. It's always about being mindful and aware of what words you're putting on the page for people to consume.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that I do try and keep in the, like you're always going to have characters that are maybe a little problematic because that's how they are. And it's how they're handled because let's face it, if you wrote all your characters being perfect and had zero flaws, that would make for a very boring book.
Yes.
But it's about how you handle the situations, how the situations that come up are addressed and things of that nature so that, yes, this person isn't great, but their people aren't great. I mean, you're bound to come across folks like that.
Preach.
So, you know.
People aren't great. Put it on a sweatshirt. I'll wear it. Most days, I'd wear that sweatshirt.
Right. I have one that says I prefer fictional people for a reason.
Yes. So other than Sims, which maybe that still is what inspires you. Like, are there other influences or things that inspire your storytelling?
Yes, I get ideas from various things. So music is a big one. So I can listen to a song and like when the lyrics will hit me and I'm like, oh, if you took the hook of this song and tried to make it into a story, things like that. Or sometimes watching TV, people watching, if you're out somewhere, and you're watching people, and even though you don't know what's going on, but if you see two people having some sort of interaction, and it might be the writer in me or whatever, but like sometimes you can sort of make up a scenario. And like I'm not like filming people or like eavesdropping, but if you see people and they're like maybe having an argument or they're cuddled up real close and they're laughing and giggling, and like little things like that can like spin off an idea of like, oh, what if kind of thing. And so I get ideas from kind of wherever, but music has been a big one for me for sure. And
I love that.
Because like sometimes like if listening to, sometimes I just bop along, but if you listen to the lyrics of the stories, of the songs, then you can get some good ideas. At least I do. I can get some ideas from things.
I have to say, that's another answer I haven't had to that question before. And it makes so much sense. Yeah. And I love songs that tell stories. Like not to be a cliche, I love musical theater. But I also I like folk songs and I have my issues with country music, but the ones that tell a good story, I like music that tells a story. Yeah. And so it makes sense that could be then the source of inspiration for taking the bridge or whatever it is and being like, all right, so that's 35 seconds of the story. What's more? What came first? What comes after? I like that.
Yeah. And since I'm a pantser, I always start with just whatever that spark of an idea is, and then literally just go from there. We start writing. And we see what happens.
Yeah. Do you typically, when you start, do you finish? Or do you have a lot of ideas where you wrote 20,000 words and were like, nope, that turns out it wasn't a thing?
I do have some uncompleted projects. Some were like I said, I do sometimes cave to peer pressure, but not always. So I did have one that I started where someone had asked, about one of the side characters in what my first and well, really the first set of books I wrote. The side character in there, they were like, "Does she get a story?" And I was like, I don't, I don't know, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote like a snippet for that. I think I got maybe 1 or 2 chapters, but I wasn't really feeling it because she was
Yeah.
never supposed to have a story.
Yeah.
So I never finished that one. And then I've gotten some other story ideas where I write out like the first sort of opening scene that plays in my head. And that's usually what happens. I get an idea and then it'll sit in my head, and then eventually the opening scene will play, and then I will finally write it down. And sometimes I complete it. Most times I complete it, but I do
Mm-hmm.
have a unfinished story file where I'm like, I'm going to go back to it.
All
But
right.
so far, um, I have it for some
Yeah.
of them, but they're
Yeah.
still there and they're waiting to be told.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something that's really calling to me, because I was mostly indie until my trad book came out last year, I would write the stories that I kind of wanted to write,
Mm-hmm.
because if I don't like the story, I can't imagine anyone reading it would like it. So I would always write what I wanted to write and get the idea and sort of go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's hugely encouraging to know that there are people like that, even published authors are like, no, sometimes it just doesn't happen. Like you can try to do something that somebody else wants you to do, and it's not there, you know?
Yes.
But also just to the point of like, if I don't want to read this story, why would I write it? And I think that's something, actors, narrators can learn from as well, which is like, if this isn't a story I would read for fun, maybe I'm not the right person to voice it, because,
Right.
like it should be somebody who loves it, who would pick this book up and would read it just for the joy of it. And then
Exactly.
you can bring that joy to the work.
That's usually the hopeful plan. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are the ups and downs, the ebb and flow of writing, and there's times I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yes.
And I'm like, and I absolutely brought this on myself. I mean, if I'm not under a deadline or I'm for a contract, whatever, I brought this on myself.
Yeah.
Do I really need to finish this kind of thing? But yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody's coming to your work for the first time, what book would you say, here's a really good place to start to know who I am as an author?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one. But I'm probably going to say Mechanics of Love. That is my first full-length sapphic story. And with that one, I went into it thinking that one of the ladies, Irene, was going to be the one who had the most baggage, because she's in the middle of a divorce. She's leaving her husband. She's realizing she spent her whole life being a different version of who people thought she should be.
Mm-hmm.
So she was sort of coming into her own and wanting to live her truest self now. And then we have Remy, who's the town mechanic. It's a small town romance. And she's always sort of known who she is. She's been out and proud since, high school. And she's always been very blunt in how she views the world, how she talks to and interacts with people. She's like, why lie? What is the point of hiding?
Yeah.
Was always her viewpoint. And Irene and Remy really would butt heads, but it was, as I wrote that story, like I said, I'm a pantser. And I thought that Irene was going to be the one with the most baggage because, like I said, she's been in sort of an unhappy marriage. Her husband was cheating on her. She had a whole bunch of stuff going on. But surprisingly, it was Remy who also had stuff going on in the background. But because of her life, she sort of kept everything internalized because she didn't think she had anyone she could lean on.
Mm-hmm.
And so their story had a lot of like emotions on both sides, which I wasn't expecting. But it was good because it was like not really a coming out story, because Irene always kind of knew she was bi, but scared to say she was bi. But that would be the story I would tell people to read, because it does have a lot of, different levels of emotion and understanding that need to take place, growth, and all of that sort of came together. And when those two did get together, it was interesting to see how they actually had more in common than especially Remy thought they did. So
Yeah,
that
I
would
love that.
probably be the one I would tell people to read first.
Yeah, I have a feeling Remy and I would get along. That sounds familiar. Came out early, never really took guff for it. Was just blunt, and sometimes candor is an armor.
Yes.
So
And that
that's
was
what I would
hers.
say. That's what I'll say about that. And I grew up, and later in life, would meet people who were like, when you were a teenager, I thought you were just an asshole. And I was like, well, maybe I was, but the reason I was an asshole is because I wasn't letting people close to me, because then they couldn't hurt me if they rejected me. Because
Yes.
that was, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, now we're doing therapy. So before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I've also invited you here to play a game. Are you ready for that?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, so the rules of the game are simple. I have a deck of cards. On each card is a question. The questions aim to learn more about you as a person. So some are biographical, some are hypothetical, some are just plain silly. But I will not be picking the questions you're going to answer. Fate will do that for us. So I'm going to deal 3 cards every round. You choose one, and whatever card you pick, you're agreeing to answer that question with a couple of exceptions. So if you don't want to answer a question, you have 2 opportunities to switch things up. You can turn the tables on me one time, forcing me to answer the question, or you can also discard a personal question in favor of answering a more bookish question from our white deck. But you only get dealt 1 card, and you have to answer that question. So, ready to play?
Ready.
Here we go. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Let's go with card 2.
Card 2. What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Oh my goodness.
I know we're starting heavy.
Right?
Heavy and deep.
The most overrated virtue.
Mm-hmm.
Being, what is the saying? You know, the saying's like, being nice. That's what I'm trying to say. So there's a saying, I am kind, but not always nice. The virtue of saying I'm nice to everyone, because with niceness, it can be hidden, especially as a Black woman, behind lots of aggressions, micro, macro, and all the things. So
a Black woman from the South.
Yes, a Black woman from the South. So
Southerners have that on lock.
Exactly. That's why I think it's a little overrated, being nice. Well, you can have a smile on your face and say it with sugar, but your words can still be not nice or kind. Yeah. So definitely, being seen as nice is definitely an overrated virtue, because niceness can hold or hide a lot of nastiness.
I love that answer. I love that. All right, card 1, 2, or 3?
Let's go 3.
If you could sing a duet with anyone, who would it be?
First off, no one wants me singing, because that is not my ministry. I sing great in the car by myself, but no one wants to hear that.
Don't we all?
But probably Janelle Monáe, because I think that they are awesome. They seem to have a very kind and sweet spirit, and I love their music. And they're very, very, very pretty.
Which doesn't hurt.
Does not hurt.
Doesn't hurt. Good answer. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Well, I guess we'll go 1 this time.
All right. Oh, when you think about success, who comes to mind and why?
I mean, I don't know that I can think of any one person, because success looks different for everybody. So like, you could go with someone who's sort of rich and famous. Well, actually, I would like to be rich, but not necessarily super famous. I want to be like Nora Roberts. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Mainly because Nora Roberts has written and still writes all of her books. She does her thing, and she lives her life offline. Yeah. Which would be ideal. So yes, because I would love to be able to write my books. They sell like hotcakes, and I don't have to be out there pushing them to sell like hotcakes.
Yeah. I imagine she can like still go to the grocery store.
Exactly. Go to the grocery store, live in she bought a small town, live in her town, mind her business, write her books, and not have to be online unless she chooses to be online.
I love that. Yeah. All right. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
We'll go 3.
All right. What is your favorite microwavable food?
Popcorn.
Yes. So I've had that question once before on the podcast, and I hadn't even thought about popcorn as an option, but as soon as they said it, I was like, of course that's the answer. Yes.
Yes.
It is. Popcorn's the best. I love popcorn. All right. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Card 2.
What would be the absolute worst name you could give your child?
I've had 4 of them.
Yeah.
Trying not to give them worse names.
What was on the reject list?
Oh, on the reject list. Spencer was on the reject list. My husband vetoed Spencer because he said all he thought of was Spencer's gifts. And at the time when I was pregnant with my youngest, I was really into like Wolverine for some reason. I have no idea. And so I was like, oh, we should do Logan. And he was just like, no.
Yeah. I like the name Logan and I like Wolverine, and
Right. I'm like, we're not gonna name him Wolverine.
Right.
So we went the other way, but no. So those were like some of the ones on the reject list, but I think anything that would make their lives difficult with pronunciations would probably.
And you have to have a balance with the last name. You have to consider the last name.
Right.
Because if it's one, it's just like if it's somebody's famous, if it's also their name, avoid it.
Yes.
If it makes a funny sound, if it's too close to like the name of a body part or anything that could be, anything
that could get them picked on for.
Right. Like prospective parents really should be just going to schoolyards and being like, what about this name? And be like, oh, we would call them this. Be like, and then avoid it.
Because kids can be brutal, so they would be the best audience for sure.
Exactly. All right, last round. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
We'll finish on card 1.
Okay. What do you value most in your friends?
Honesty, because my group of friends, like being able to tell me, don't blow smoke up my ass. I don't know if I can cuss. My apologies.
Yes, you can.
Okay. But just don't blow smoke. If something I do is out of pocket, let me know. If something that I wrote is trash, let me know. Don't, try and placate me and then have me out here looking like a fool, because you could have stopped it.
Nice instead of kind thing again.
Right.
Right.
So I do value honesty. It's like, okay, if this book is horrific and I should have never written it, like if this needs to stay in the drafts, tell me.
Yeah.
If something I said or something I did was not ideal, tell me. And so having that level of comfort with my friends and knowing that I can get that honesty from them, that's what
I like that. What a good note to end on.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Meka, for coming on the podcast. I so appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us for Queers and Quills, the official podcast. If you're already signed up to attend Queers and Quills, make sure to say hello to me and to Meka at the Oregon Convention Center in May. And if you're not, follow Queers and Quills on Instagram so you can see the fun we're having this year and get updates about ticket availability in the future. Until next time, I'm Kirt Graves, and I hope you're having a very gay day. Queers and Quills, the official podcast, is produced and hosted by Kirt Graves, in coordination with Mahogany Mail and Marley Valentine. All copyrighted material is shared with permission. Music and sound effects are licensed through Storyblocks Audio. All opinions shared are those of the individuals and do not reflect the positions or policies of any company or organization with which they happen to be associated.